Back up, or you're going to jump next. Back up.
He's fine.
When I decide to be a mom, I am a mom all the way. I don't need BS from anyone.
Officers, we have this
Officers.
Jump next. Back up. What's going on here? Sir, get back. What's going on here?
Get off of him. I was first. Amendment.
He's not violent. He's not violent.
So a hearing was held on gun laws, just for the sake of holding it by these politicians and many Republicans that wanted nothing to do with this couple here, and known now parents of one of the murdered Parkland students there. As we know, Oliver Manuel there was talking about what was going on and how his pain still is there, and he's looking to actually push some kind of changes with our gun laws. After he was then arrested for being there and I guess causing too much of an outburst, and he shoved his wife aside as well, he then took to television to tell his story of what went down. Let's watch.
Okay. All right.
She goes.
Please remove that woman, please.
Yes, officer, please.
You're removed. You're breaching protocol and disorder in the committee room.
You took my son away from me, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna listen to your absurd things.
No.
Yes.
Please remove her.
Why don't you remove her?
And remove the gentleman too. And I'm going to read a statement for the other folks in attendance. The committee welcomes the public to this meeting. We have people on both sides of the aisle. We have people on both sides of the aisle.
These members were lying for more than an hour. Every chance they'd had to speak for 5 minutes was packed with lies. Everything was a big fight and putting the ATF as the main problem and not talking about the real problem, which is gun violence itself. You can see these guys joking, laughing, smiling, comparing me with the insurrection. So that says a lot of our leaders. And if I had two options, one is raise my kid's voice and the other one is getting arrested, I'll go with number two.
It's outrageous there. You see some of those lawmakers and staff, I guess, around them laughing, joking, as a man who will forever be in pain over losing his son in this way, is fighting. And they're fighting to try and stop others from having to go through what they're going through. This fight that he's putting up is not going to get his kid back. They're not going to get their kid back as they fight for this. They're looking to help others. And that's just offensive to these types of folks. It's crazy how this whole thing works. But Maxwell Frost, the young lawmaker that just got into Congress, he also had some thoughts about it. At least he was defending them in some form. Let's watch.
I plan on acknowledging three people. Both of them are not in this room anymore. Folks who I've worked with and that I know, Manny and Patricia Oliver, who lost their son, Joaquin Oliver, in the Parkland shooting. To lose a child to gun violence, to see the photos of your child sitting in a pool of blood, I can't imagine that. You know, Manny and Patricia have dedicated their lives to fighting for a world where true justice can be achieved, because unfortunately, there is no justice for the dead, and true justice is ensuring that this never happens again. What happened outside to Manny and Patricia, who are just fighting for a world where no other parents have to go through what they went through. And I, for one, believe this has nothing to do with policy and everything to do with politics.
So as at least some folks were defending him, there was more that went down, though. There's a reason why this fight continues to happen. Because look at this. Just, I think it was even just today, down in Nashville, Tennessee. Again, like I said, we're looking to hopefully stop this from happening to other families. This is what went down.
We know at this point that this shooter is a female. She appears to be in her teens, although her identification has not been confirmed at this juncture. We know that she was armed with at least 2 assault-type rifles and a handgun. We are efforting now to identify her. She entered the school through a side entrance and traversed her way from the first floor to the second floor.
So more folks are going to be living this nightmare for the rest of their lives. There was 3 children and apparently 3 staff members, as the AP pointed out here, that died in Nashville. This is a private Christian school. So can we start eliminating these excuses that people like to make that, oh, it's the public school system. Oh, it's a lack of parents in the house, because there was 2 parents there. They were talking about this other thing before because they lost a son. And I guess the Christian school doesn't change that either. It's weird how it always whittles down to the gun problem that we have. It happens over and over and over again, Jess. And look, as I've said every other time, for folks right now who still have their lives or still get to hug their children at night, tomorrow and the next day and the next day, there's going to be fewer families that have that privilege because we just can't get beyond ourselves.
Yeah, what went down in that meeting that we showed is so representative of something that comes up a lot when you see people like in the streets organizing with their signs and they're shouting, and sometimes they'll disrupt traffic, sometimes they'll block doors. And whenever I participate in those things or organize those things, there's always people who come up to us and they're like, why don't you just go to a public meeting? Why don't you go to a hearing? Why don't you voice your concerns? We have a process for this in our democracy. Like, do it civilly. But this is what happens when you show up and say something that someone running one of these meetings doesn't like. They oftentimes cut your mic if they don't like what you're saying. And then, you shout, and then the part of you shouting gets recorded after your mic's been cut. And then they're like, well, you shouldn't have been shouting in the public meeting. That was, very disorderly of you to act like that. And then they'll kick you out by force. That's not a functioning democracy. That doesn't leave us a lot of options to be heard by our elected representatives. We know that gun control is popular in the United States, and we know that the people in office that are supposed to serve us are not taking that seriously. They're not taking action on that. And what's crazy is in this video, you hear him say, this committee welcomes the public, and we have both sides of the aisle. But in the American population, there's not just 2 sides of the aisle. There's not Democrats and Republicans. Only 54% of the population votes in most elections, let alone the voting population of all of the people that are of age that are actually participating. Not even all of those people identify with a political party. So he's saying, we have defined the constraints of political ideology you can have when you show up and participate in these meetings. And if we don't like what you have to say, we're going to use our power to kick you out. And I think that is sad, because as you said, these people were not asking for anything for themselves. They were trying to make the country better for other people. And that's exactly what our representatives could be doing. And that was so disgusting for that to happen in his face that he kicked her out.
There's usually supposed to be a process whenever you see your constituents show up and say something to you that you acknowledge it, even if it's from different perspectives and points of view. Maybe you find a way to do something about it. So, still talking about life and death, that has to be a partisan issue. Think about it. It's a partisan issue whether or not children should be shot up in schools, or whether or not we should do something about it. Because they'll suggest things completely disingenuously that we should do something about it, like put up some extra walls, maybe put in a couple of security personnel that are too afraid to do anything about it. Why should the security personnel be dying at a school? But by the way, they don't. At least in Uvalde, they don't, because they're too afraid. They want to let the children die instead. I know a way they can stop it. Our politicians just don't want anything to do with that.